Watch me paint watercolour flowers on this ceramic yarn bowl. A yarn bowl is in case you don't know, is a bowl that you put wool in, and while you're knitting, and you pull it out of the holes, and then it's got some other holes for the knitting needles. So I'm going to paint flowers all the way around this one. So I'm starting by sketching my designs loosely using the Underglaze pencils. These are quite similar to coloured pencils, but they're quite soft. They're very highly pigmented, and they're designed to go on ceramics, on pottery, and on the bisque fired or the greenware pottery. It's easier to paint and to draw on the bisque fired pottery because it's hard. And if you do it onto the greenware, which is unfired, then it can sink into it. The pencils can sink in and leave marks. So I'm sketching a vague shape to start off with, and then I'm going into the underglaze paints and layering them up. And these are watercolour underglazes. You can buy pots of ready mixed underglazes as well, and I've got plenty of those, but they're very bright and they're quite solid, they're quite opaque, whereas I like the transparency of these paints. It reminds me of watercolour paints. They're not as easy to use as watercolour paints because when you're working on paper, you can let the colours run into each other with the liquid, whereas you can't do it with these because the bisque pottery is very porous and it absorbs any liquid. So it's a very matte surface. And so you can paint in layers though, and you can get partly watercolour effect from it. So sketching out again, and I'm starting off using a bit of black, but then swapping to green and purple and blues, lots of different colours, so that there's a bit of a softness there, so it's not just all black outlines. And but with the colours, you can layer them on top of each other and do a little bit of blending, more so than you can with the solid opaque underglazes. But you can't quite match that flowing watercolour quality that you get from real watercolours on paint. It's quite difficult to paint and draw on pottery as well because it's curved and you have to hold it without touching the paint or the pencil marks, because if you do, you smudge them. So it's very difficult to manage it, but I think it's worth it. I really enjoy the process. And after I've drawn and painted the flowers on, I'm going to dip it in transparent underglaze, transparent top glaze, sorry, and then fire it for 24 hours. Well, not 24 hours, it'll be a few hours, but it has to cool down then 24 hours. And you'll get a shiny coat and it will make all the colours shine and come through beautifully, I hope. So we're doing flowers all the way around and then transferring it into the kiln. And I'll show you what it looks like after it's been fired. So doing lots of different layers. I'm doing the palest colours first and then the darker colours on top to try and create a sort of 3D effect. And I'm hoping it's working. I hope they don't smudge or cake when they're in the kiln, which can happen sometimes. There we go. That's all those finished now. Now for firing. Here's the final bowl. So we've got watercolour flowers all the way around. It's been fired a second time and it's got a top glaze on it as well. So I've painted watercolour flowers all the way around, and there's one inside, there's a poppy inside, and I've signed the bottom. That's my yarn bowl, flowers on a yarn bowl.